there's a psychology here that Nye is arguing about. And really what he's saying is that this American sublime, this whole ownership, is reliant upon the experience of pleasure, which causes the individual to continue to seek out such experiences of pleasure, to deny those experiences that may cause pain or trepidation. Quote, he says, Americans seem to have a particular affinity for sharp discontinuities in sensory experiences, for sudden shifts of perspective, for a broken figure of thought in which the quotidian is ruptured. That there's a persistent American attraction to this technological sublime. Not only is the sublime a recurrent figure in American thought, potential sublimity has also justified the creation of new technologies in the first place, for the thinking of the subject is a consciousness that can stand apart from the world and it projects its will upon it. Basically saying that not only is this progressive ideology that's inherent in technological idealism sort of guiding American will and American thinking about policy and action, but it's saying that just because this technology exists, we must find a way to use it and include it in literally everything that we're doing without ever considering what some of these ramifications may be, how this may tear us apart from the natural order, how this may actually make our lives less better in so many ways. Nye starts to argue this sort of duality in a very unique argument, where he starts to argue that in some ways, standing at the base of a building like Al Khalifa here, right, that the individual is both humiliated, as what Burke and Kant had said, but is also empowered by the sheer technological prowess of humanity. And that because the society has obviously this power to create this huge thing in front of me, that humanity sort of sees this as an empowering sort of idea. So we start to look and say, well, does the skyscraper destroy the scale of the city then? Does this now replace what was? Is the skyscraper now eating the previous society that was here? This new structure, this new building, is that actually destroying the previous society and now justifying this new society growing out of it? Or is that absolutely reducing the citizen, the individual citizen, to an insignificant state, because automatically this new structure that's building out is something that the individual has very little capability and change? Is that actually pointing out the insignificance of the individual citizen? Or is this really the demonstration of the individual's capacity to be an expressive nature upon their environment? Is this something that, looking upon this, you could say, by golly, one human crafted that, one human drafted that, one human dreamt of this and created this and has dwarfed all other human elements to this point, meaning that because we can do this one thing, what's to stop us from doing one better than this one thing? Now, I suggest that this answer is absolutely dependent upon the amount of social, political, or economic power of the individual subject viewing the situation. That, say, a homeless person viewing a multi-billion-dollar building being constructed is only humiliated by it. However, a billionaire seeing a building being constructed merely sees continued opportunity for investment and new potential for growth. Therefore, Nye argues that technologies can be perceived as an extension and an affirmation of reason, or as the expression of a crushing, omnipotent force outside the self, that because of the lack or the presence of that social, political, and economic power of the subject, that the sublime experience changes very differently for the society in which it's being dealt with. And I argues here again that the urban metropolis is not only replacing the landscape, but it's mimicking the landscape. As you can see on the photo on the right here, the cityscape for the city of Denver mimics very closely the mountain lines surrounding it. That this, as Nye's argument, is not mere coincidence. This is not happen chance, but it is merely mankind trying to mimic the natural surroundings and trying to replace them with light. The light blaring up through the city at night is replacing the moonlit natural sort of environment and showing mankind's destiny and replacement of the natural environment. He's saying that this is definitely mankind flouting their domination over nature, that skyscrapers replace mountains, that electric light replaces the moon and the stars, blaring them out, and that parks are now designed interfaces with nature within the city. No longer does one just simply wander out into the mountainside. No. One must have a designed interface with nature. There must be these certain kinds of trees that are placed at this interval. There must be this sort of construction between grasscapes and waterscapes and the amount of natural light that dwells through these things, that they're all engineered in order to perceive maximal benefit from a very small space. In this idea, the individual is reduced, is made very insignificant, and very understandably feels this looming sensation of the interchangeability of individuals, that if you're not measuring up to the standard, you can very easily be replaced. It's a factory line of humanity, because everything around us has been built and designed to create this sort of uniformity, that if one of us isn't fitting into that cog, it can be very easily replaced and placed in with another human. A lot of that comes with this idea that mankind across the globe almost universally is wearing the same clothing, eating the same food, listening to the same music, watching the same media, be it video or magazines, whatever it may be. But these are all sort of universally homogenizing elements, and it makes us feel like we are very, very insignificant. We also see the idea that factory and institutional tours, they're open every day. Factories continue to process vehicles, for example, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. That even schools and governments take pauses, but industry continues to soldier on through all these adverse aspects. And it creates this idea that humanity needs an accessible space available to them at all times. Thus, this idea of the necessity of including places like malls and entertainment venues in our living spaces, and that they must be not only universally accessible, but they must be accessible at all times. They must be accessible day and night and accessible to us at our closest whim, to pick up our phone in our pocket and immediately order that thing off Amazon or something like that. But they also cannot just be accessible. They also must be similar in content. I can't just see the coolest shirt on the television show that I just watched, that we all watched around the globe. I need to be able to access a very similar shirt to that for me to purchase, in order for me to feel like I have interacted and become one of the society. Okay. This is where Nye and Leo Marx start to combine this idea of the machine and the garden. Nye admits that the tension exists between this natural garden and the technological machine. And Nye's exemplar is Central Park. Central Park, this very engineered space in the center of New York City that is serviced by subways, by buses, by taxi cabs, but not populated by people. That it's a space that's intrinsically developed. It was developed for uniformity. In fact, that it's designed along a grid system. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the idea that every lamppost within Central Park has a grid coordinate on it. So if you're lost, you can find your way out of the park merely based upon the lamp that you're next to. It's a crazy idea. But Nye argues that in this natural garden and its technological outsides, that Americans found this disruption of ordinary sense of perception that was surrounding them in the cityscape, this arisal in a garden, as a sign of natural greatness, right? That we had shown up, we had been able to not only capture and own the space around us, but we need to be able to terraform it to our desires and create a more perfect version of nature within our perfect version of a city. This logic of the technological sublime demanded that each object exceed its precursor. Central Park wasn't the first. In fact, Boston Garden was the first. And when Boston had a city park, New York saw that city park and decided that they needed to go over and above that and not only exceed that, but double and triple the size and grandeur of what Boston had. In fact, each form of the technological sublime became a natural part of the world and ceased to amaze, even though the capacity and the desire for the amazement persisted. Once we all became accustomed to the persistence of trains or airplanes or radio waves or immediate access to the internet to information, it ceased to amaze us. It became an expected portion. However, we continue to demand that we be amazed through new intervention. And this was captured onto, in fact, longed onto by these investor and inventor entrepreneurs who decided, well, the easiest way to sell a car is not to just sell the most perfect car, but to sell an iterative process of a car so that every year you need to buy the new thing. It could be a small incremental change, but as long as we present it in the lens that this is in fact something amazing, it creates and fulfills this desire for amazement within the social construct.